Welcome to Science Class. Today we will be investigating the role of climate and how it shapes ecosystems. Nothing is more impactful on life than climate. Producers support all other organisms in an ecosystem with the energy and building blocks they need, and producers depend directly on the climate. Limits in sunlight, moisture, or warmth will limit the growth of producers and therefore lessen the biodiversity of an ecosystem. Weather and climate are not the same. In my home state of South Dakota, we have plenty of days throughout the summer months with temperatures equally as high as they are here in California where I live now. But I'm now 1,000 kilometers closer to the equator than I was in South Dakota, and so instead of a small handful of days with temperatures reaching 100 degrees Fahrenheit, it's a regular occurrence here. For 3 months out of the year, my home area experiences average highs below freezing, whereas the lowest average highs here are still 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Despite that though, you find a higher density of producers throughout much of South Dakota than in the particular part of California where I live. There are, on average, 58 days with rain totaling about 68 centimeters in my home area, and only 26 days here totaling 28 centimeters. So the area with a drastically shorter, what you might call growing season, produces far greater biomass at the bottom of the energy pyramid. Climate is complicated. There are a wide number of factors at play, but understanding those factors is an integral part of ecology. Let's get started. Although I have no doubt you're smart enough to know this, we still haven't actually distinguished the difference between weather and climate yet. Weather describes the current condition of Earth's atmosphere in a specific place. Weather changes by the season, month, day, even minute. South Dakota holds 2 world records for temperature fluctuations. In 1943 in Spearfish, the temperature rose from negative 20 degrees Celsius to 7 degrees above zero in only 2 minutes. This rapid warmth broke windows and caused tree trunks to burst open as the frozen sap within them rapidly expanded. The opposite happened as well. In 1911, in Rapid City, the temperature plummeted 27.2 degrees Celsius in 5 minutes. Now, while those are extremes, we have all experienced the unpredictability of weather. Rain or hail come out of nowhere. Strong wind gusts arrive without warning. That is the chaotic nature of weather. Even though there can be extreme fluctuations in weather, if you average out the conditions day by day, you get a fairly steady trend. This is what climate is. You will sometimes hear people say rather unfortunate things like, it's supposed to be 25 below zero this weekend, therefore global warming doesn't exist. We tend to look at the world through the lens of our own experience. But one person or one city or one cold day does not represent the global picture. The dominant factors that shape an area's weather and climate are solar radiation, geography, altitude, and latitude, and we'll cover each of these in detail. The reason we have seasons on the planet is twofold. First, because the planet is a sphere, its surface is bathed in solar radiation at varying levels of intensity. That alone would not cause seasons, but because the Earth is tilted, the temperate zones fluctuate between direct and indirect solar radiation, which leads to fluctuations in the amount of heating of the atmosphere and oceans. To illustrate this, compare the temperate zones on the planet when it is winter in one hemisphere and summer in the other hemisphere. You can see that one band of solar radiation is concentrated over a certain area, whereas that exact same amount of solar radiation is spread over a much larger area at the corresponding latitude in the other hemisphere. In New York City, the sun is at an angle of about 73 degrees on the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, and the day when Earth's North Pole is pointing directly towards the sun. Meanwhile, on the winter solstice in New York, the sun rises to a very shallow 26 degrees. If you spread heat over a larger area, it doesn't heat up as much. Simple. But there's more to it than receiving light from the sun. Earth's atmosphere plays a crucial role in maintaining steady temperatures on Earth. The difference at any one time between the hottest and coldest place on Earth can be as much as 141 degrees Celsius, but that's not a logical comparison. Instead, compare the difference between day and night in the same location. I just checked, and the difference between today's high and tonight's low where I live is 16.6 degrees Celsius, a pretty small difference. Deserts, surprisingly, have the greatest fluctuations, around 31 degrees Celsius. The moon, which is the same distance from the sun as Earth, sees temperatures on its lit surface of 127 degrees Celsius and lows on its dark side of negative 173 degrees Celsius. Without an atmosphere, thermal energy radiates into space, and so no warmth is retained. And without clouds, atmosphere, ozone, and other things to reflect sunlight, the surface is blasted with the full force of the sun. The balance in the way that Earth absorbs some of the sun's radiation and does not allow all of it to escape is our greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect is essential to weather and life on Earth. Greenhouse gases trap radiation. We're not going to get into the physics of how that works, but only a select few gases can do this. Carbon dioxide is the most influential because it is the highest concentrated in our atmosphere. Methane is roughly 30 times more powerful of a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, but there's very little of it in the atmosphere. Worryingly, methane levels are dramatically rising because of cattle and thawing permafrost in the polar regions, which is causing long dead, but previously frozen organic matter to decay. Water vapor is the most powerful overall greenhouse gas and contributes the most to the warming effect, but water vapor fluctuates with temperature because it comes from water evaporating, whereas carbon dioxide levels don't rise and fall during the day or season. That pretty much covers solar radiation and latitude, but those factors alone never tell the whole story. Altitude also plays a huge role. The tallest peak in the world, Mount Everest, is perpetually covered with snow, but only about 50 kilometers from Everest there's a rainforest because Everest is just outside of the Tropic of Cancer. Altitude affects climate because the density of Earth's atmosphere dramatically declines with elevation. Only 3,000 meters above sea level, the air is only 75% the density it is at sea level. During the day, solar radiation heats the land, but at night, the heat radiates into the atmosphere. A more dense atmosphere slows that loss of heat down significantly. I camped in Bryce Canyon a few years back, and the daytime temperatures were hitting about 32 degrees Celsius. But when I woke up in my tent at about 6 in the morning, I was shocked to discover that the ambient air temperature was only 2 degrees Celsius. Bryce Canyon is over 2,700 meters above sea level, and I did not account for this when I failed to pack anything warm. The hottest place in the world, Death Valley, sits well below sea level. But it's not just the altitude either. An area's geography truly reveals its climate patterns and helps make sense of the sometimes very sharp boundaries between two completely different climates. When I say geography, I'm really talking about your proximity to certain geographic features, like a mountain chain or the oceans. Mountain ranges drastically change the climate of the area surrounding them. Many areas along the tropical region of Asia experience monsoon seasons. These bring enormous quantities of rainfall. When you view Asia from space, you are struck by the dramatic contrast between the tropical green regions along the southeast and the brown, seemingly lifeless deserts of Tibet and Mongolia. The only reason this region looks this way is because of the Himalayan mountains. Moisture and warmth from the Indian Ocean moves inland, but it cannot pass over the peaks of the Himalayas. The moisture condenses and falls as rain and snow, which then drains through a series of rivers into the Bay of Bengal. Without these mountains, huge spans of China would be green and extremely productive. This is what's known as a rain shadow, the side of a mountain range that is cut off from regular precipitation. Death Valley in California is cut off by 3 different mountain ranges. Earlier, I told you it only rains about 28 centimeters a year where I live. If you drive around the area I live in, you will see field after field of orchard farms growing lemons, oranges, walnuts, and much more. These trees cannot live here normally. Here's an orchard that is no longer maintained, and you can see that it is quite dead. This entire area is hydrologically engineered. The water has its source high up in the Sierra Nevada mountains. Humans have created reservoirs to store the water and ditches to transport the water exactly where they want it. Finally, I want to touch on the role of oceans. If you talk to a climate scientist, they will tell you that oceans dictate the climate, whereas the atmosphere dictates the weather. I'm going to give you the simple version of this. Water has a very high specific heat, meaning it can store and release more energy than air can. Living near the ocean has massive influence over your climate, but it also matters what part of the ocean you live by. We'll illustrate this with some examples. When you picture the UK, you probably don't imagine bitter cold winters and piles of snow. That's because none of those things happen there. If you look at the average temperatures for London, There isn't a single month where the average low is below freezing, which may come as a surprise when you learn that London is as far away from the equator as Edmonton, Alberta, where 7 months of the year the average low is below freezing. The reason behind the disparity in temperatures is because the UK is an island and receives warm water from the Gulf Stream current, which releases heat into the atmosphere, warming it. But that is also just an accident of geography. If you go directly west and touch the coast of Canada, also on the Atlantic Ocean, same distance from the equator as the UK, in St. John's, Quebec, the temperatures are much, much colder in the winter. Ocean currents circulate according to Earth's rotation. You can see this clearly visualized if you look at a world map showing ocean surface temperatures. Being near the water also has the effect of stabilizing temperatures, keeping the fluctuations down. Look at the average high and low temperatures for Seattle, Washington. Barely any difference whatsoever. However, in New York City, on the opposite coast, you can see the highs and lows are much greater. This is because New York City sits on a coast where the winds typically blow out into the ocean, pushing away that stabilizing heat it brings, while the winds are opposite in Seattle. Oh, and it doesn't rain as much as you think in Seattle. It actually rains more in New York City in terms of total precipitation. I could easily go on, but we will stop there. I know that was a lot of information, but the climate is very complicated. But with the right kind of technology, and with an open mind, nothing has to be outside of your grasp of knowledge. Next time, we are going to shrink down to the microscopic level and learn all about the activities that go on in cells. Thanks for watching.